Hey everybody, James Introcaso here. Before we start the podcast, I just wanted to remind you that if you are headed to Gen Con, I will be there. So will Rudy Basso, the Venture Maidens, the Dames and Dragons. Mike Shea is going to be there. And we are very excited to announce we have just added a new podcast to DSPN, Total Party Thrill, which is an amazing advice podcast hosted by Shane and Ishan, which covers 5e and a lot of other tabletop RPGs. They talk about their campaigns. They give amazing advice. It is a must listen for me and has been for years now. We are so excited to have them join the network. They are also going to be on the panel. You should totally check it out. Head on over to Gen Con events, search for Don't Split the Podcast Network, and we will be the only event that comes up. So go check it out. And while you are on the internet, head on over to Total Party Thrill and hit subscribe because they are an amazing podcast as well. Okay, let's start the show. This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, I am talking with game designer, event coordinator, true dungeon owner, Alex Kammer. He is just a man of all seasons, an RPG mogul, loves D&D, has this amazing D&D collection, and he runs Gamehole Con. It is an amazing conversation with him, one that is really great. He really knows and loves the game so much, and Gamehole Con sounds amazing. I really want to go check it out. So here is my interview with him. Okay, everybody. So now I am here with Alex. Alex, welcome to Tabletop Babble. For people who don't know, who are you and what do you do in the world of tabletop RPGs?
Yeah, I appreciate it. First of all, James, thanks for having me. I'm a fan of the show. I dig what you do, and thank you for promoting and doing your share to make our hobby the juggernaut that it is these days. I am the director of Gamehole Con, a annual tabletop gaming convention in Madison, Wisconsin, each November. I am also one of the owners of True Dungeon, the immersive dungeon experience that hopefully some of you have tried at Gen Con. We're now at Origins and PAX South, and of course Gamehole Con as well. So, and I'm an author. I like you. I kick around on. I do third-party publishing. I work for people like Fraud God Games, Goodman Games. I've published things with them. I write stuff for Adventure League. So, sort of, I've got little toes in a few different ponds. Let's put it that way.
Definitely. Well, thank you first for the kind words about the podcast, and it's awesome to have you here. You're sort of like a mogul, a D&D mogul. You're doing so many different things, which is awesome, and it's incredible to have you here. I was talking before we hit record and saying to you that like every year I hear more and more about how amazing Gamehole Con is. I've never had the pleasure of going, but I'm making plans to get to one probably next year because I just keep hearing all these awesome things from people all over the industry, from people that I play games with. Like it's just everywhere. Gamehole Con is sort of on the mind of individuals. So I think a lot of us understand how conventions work and that sort of thing. What makes Gamehole Con special?
Sure. So, first of all, Gamehole Con, the name. Obviously, if you are setting out to make a major commercial venture, you probably would go with a different name, maybe Dragon Fighter Con or Barbarian Con or something more cool sounding like that. Well, the Gamehole is my game group. It's an actual thing. It's a physical location as well. And for years, it was in my basement. And hence, that's why we called it the Gamehole, because we played there for years. This is a group that's been getting together weekly for, almost 20 years now. So Gamehole Con is just my gaming group. That's who runs the show. So we sat around, years ago, as everyone knows, Gen Con left Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and moved to Indianapolis. And we were sad because we lost this great big con that was in our state and nothing really was there to replace it. So we were kicking around thinking, God, we have, looking around the table, we have some pretty capable people arrayed that we probably could do a damn good job running a con, but also do it our way, which is going to be whimsical, fun, high energy, but extremely well organized. and not with the goal of not being to make money. It's remarkably freeing when you're on a doing a venture when you're not having to worry about making money.
I bet.
Yeah, and so I think that's really why we've grown so fast is that it's all focused on the attendee and the guest experience. We're trying to run the show that we want to go to. So that means just awesome events, awesome guests, great swag. The games run on time. You show up and you get a schedule and a badge, and it's in a packet that has your name spelled correctly, and everything's there. The layout makes sense. If you have a question, it's answered immediately and professionally. Really top-notch customer service, stuff like that. I mean, it's not really hard from a business standpoint if you come, I come from that world. But in gaming, as I think everyone knows, we sometimes suffer from on that end of it. So I think because we're very well run and it's just got this crazy momentum now. When people come to our show, they want to come back, which is humbling and awesome. And so you were mentioning some of the folks who have said nice things about us. It's a challenge for us because each year we try to invite new guests, but everyone wants to come. Like, for example, we have this massive guest list. If you look at our site, I got an email about 3 weeks ago, and Steve Jackson emails me and says, "Hey, can I come back?" I mean, what am I going to say? No? I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. So I'm like, "Of course, Steve, come on back." And that's what it is. So that's why we have like 50 guests every year. It's crazy. So I don't. Does that make us a unique? I don't know. There are a lot of good conventions out there. We just want to do ours our way and to be really a celebration of gaming and a promotion of gaming. So we try to do things like local publishers. We do something called a demo row where you can have a nice spot in a really high traffic area. And if you have a board game that you produced, you can sit there and have better access to our attendees than you can in the dealer hall, because we think it's important for smaller startup people to get into the hobby. We try to do stuff like that. Again, when you're trying to maximize profits, you can do all kinds of fun things.
It makes a lot of sense that when you're not focused on making money, you can focus a lot more on the experience for the guests going. Like you said, you've got quite the guest list on your website. It looks like most of the Wizards of the Coast design team is coming. You've got people from Cobalt Press. You've got Patrick Rothfuss coming. You've got Rudy Rutenberg and Satine Phoenix. You've got the Dungeon Bastard. Like, this is just an amazing list. The AL admins are all making their way. Monty Cook. Oh my gosh, I could just spend an hour reading names here. But I think what is so incredible is that people talk about the experience, and I've been to many cons. You were mentioning some things as simple as the name being spelled correctly on your badge, to where do I go to do something next? You got to go here to this booth first, and then you got to go all the way across this hall to get your tickets, and then you got to come back if you want to play your game, and then that sort of thing. It sounds like you have had similar experiences at cons. And so what are sort of some of the areas you really pride yourself on? Like, we at Gamehole Con do it the best. Feel free to brag.
Yeah, well, I will try to limit that a little bit because I'll go on and on. But I've gone to cons. First of all, I love convention gaming. That's one of the things I dig. And in addition to my weekly game, it's a very different kind of gaming, but it's a really fun kind of gaming. And that's what we wanted to, of course, do, is make a tremendous experience. I think we approached it with humility, first of all. That we obviously had not run a convention before. So what we thought, we sat down and really talked about what shows we like, or what aspects of different shows we like, and what didn't we like. And just like some of the things you're listing, we just made lists, and approached it and said, let's hear what we're going to here are the goals we're going to have, and here's what we're going to try to avoid, and worked through it pretty systematically. The biggest part, if I'm asked to be on panels to talk about how do you run a con, and my first thing is say, wait, make sure you really want to do this, because it's a tremendous amount of work, especially if you want to do it properly. Is preparation. Now, I'm a trial lawyer for my living. You're looking at my office actually here in my law firm. The key to trial work or any kind of theatrical presentation or anything is preparation. And the same thing with the convention. We don't start. Our dates this year are November 8th through 11. We don't start in September. We started in December last year of getting things rolling and starting the process of getting ready for this year. That's paramount. If you can work in advance and get things lined up, get all your guest details lined up, get hotels sorted out. I mean, there's just a myriad, just endless details. And each time you wrestle one down and get it behind you, it frees you to do things like every someone writes an email to us and asks a good question, I can spend a few minutes writing hopefully a thoughtful answer instead of, first of all, either not answering, which is very common the experience when you send an email to a convention, or something terse and really kind of a brush off kind of response. So that's, I think we take, because we have a full year round approach, which we have to. I mean, all the myself and all the people associated with the show are full time professionals in other industries with families and interests and so on. We can't, I can't step out and do. Series of 40-hour weeks working on Gamehole Con. It's just not possible. So that has to be spread out throughout the year. I think that's why it's works so well, is that we anticipate problems and we work to solve the problem before it actually happens. Like, for example, our growth. That's a real challenge to have something that grows 40% every year. I mean, that's a real challenge for logistically, technology side, and so on. Fortunately, we have a couple guys in the crew that are, one guy is a Microsoft guy, one guy is a Agilent guy, and so on. We have the resources to scale our IT, and each year try to add new things to make the user experience with their website better, faster, and also anticipating, hey, this is going to grow by X this year. Let's get the servers spooled up so we don't have things like registration crashes, which is the hallmark of almost every other convention. And we've had some glitch.
Never not been to a convention that does it.
Exactly. And some of them are like annual rights. Like, I love Origins, but it's like an annual right there, that the server's down or the registration's down again. And that, it makes me crazy. I've been there just like all of you, sitting there clicking my mouse, like, why? What's going on? Why can't I get the game I want? And we want to do everything we can conceivably possible to not have that experience when you're registering for our show. So it's just stuff like that. We're just trying to really approach it from the user standpoint, because we're con goers, and we're not there's nothing corporate about our show. It's just a bunch of knuckleheads who are running this thing, and we want to do it so you guys have a tremendous experience, just like we want to have a tremendous experience when we go to cons. Just that simple, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And those considerations and having sort of people specialized and on the ball is huge. And it's similar to, we talk on this show a lot about creating role-playing game products. The more prep work you put in before you start putting, pen to page and making art happen and that sort of thing, the better off your product is, right?
Exactly, to that point. We were talking before I started recording, and I showed you my module for Adventure League this year, my CCC, and this is it's called the For the Glory of Blautar. And so what you have is a completely finished module that is going to be, I'm going to play test with my friends at Gen Con. I've sent it out to friends to read, and we're going to keep tweaking the layout and tweaking the adventure. So hopefully by November, here we are in July, we have a really nice product for people to play. So exactly, James, if you can get in advance of your deadlines and get things done ahead of time and have time to really make something great, it's the same. I mean, all these things are about preparation. And so I completely agree with you. And that's why your stuff is so good, because you obviously take a measured approach to your writing, and time to rethink it. And rewrites are extremely important when you're producing something. I mean, the only person I've ever seen who can sit down and write something, especially quickly, and have it be awesome, is Ed Greenwood. That guy is amazing to work with because he's so explosively creative, and it comes out. It's amazing. It's print worthy, his stuff, when you get it. He's just draft form. It's like, I can't find an error anywhere, and it's all cool. And I'm in awe of that kind of explosive productivity. Beyond that, all of us, I think, need to write, step back, read what we've written, and make sure, and rewrite and all that kind of stuff. So same approach with the show.
Definitely. And Ed has certainly put in his 10,000 hours and then some. He's got tons and tons of experience, and speaks like that too. Whenever I talk with him, I'm impressed that there's no uhs or ums in his speech. He's just, he flows into these sort of beautiful lyrical thoughts and things. So, and speaking of your Adventurers League adventure, you've got some really cool stuff coming up at Gamehole Con for people who are there to play D&D and for people who are part of the Adventurers League organized play program, right?
Yeah, we sure do. We sure do. I am an unabashed, huge D&D fan. I started playing in 1982 when I was 12, when I bought the first edition. It was a sixth printing player's handbook. I'm a massive collector too. I have all the stuff. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see all the stuff that I'm constantly belching forth from my collection. But I love D&D, and I'm running the Gamehole right now through Tomb of Annihilation. We're almost finished with it, and I'm running it. So I'm a very serious D&D fan. And so Adventures League is very important to us. And Wizards did us the honor by granting us the opportunity to pick a spot in the realms where we could develop our own con-created content. So I fell back with my friend Ed Greenwood, and we talked about it. And he and I came up with a list of 10 areas that we thought might be good, and we slowly winnowed that down and eliminated them until we ended up with the Border Kingdoms. And the Border Kingdoms are to the east off the Shining Sea, and it's a reason we picked it because it was relatively small, but not too small, extremely chaotic and turbulent politically, varied geographically. You have everything from fairly large cities to hamlets in a really kind of dense area. So it's just rife for adventuring. Just a great place. Every kingdoms are tipped over almost daily. And so it's very chaotic and interesting. Because that Wizards gave us that honor, we're taking it extremely seriously. Ed wrote a lore piece, a book that's available on DM's Guild out there now, just called The Border Kingdoms, and it's basically Gazetteer, and it's great. So we started with that, and so then our authors, and myself included, have this great document to start with, and we're going to have 11 different modules, and each one's going to have custom cover, custom art, and be hopefully really great. Several of the admins are writing stuff for us. Sean Merwin, who you of course are very familiar with, is writing doing a special set in the Border Kingdoms. So, and the way we're doing it, there's a 3-module central story arc in tier 2. That's those 1, 2, and 3. And then there are all these other adventures in different tiers that relate back, but are not, you don't have to play them in sequence. They have echoes of what's going on with the major theme. Because the problem with convention, if you have them all in a series, let's say we're going to do 1 through 11, you had to play them in order. That would be really challenging to do in a weekend. I mean, that's difficult, if not impossible. So that's why we thought we'd do it that way, have a central trilogy concluded by the 4th, this special that Sean's writing, and he's getting close to being done with, surrounded by stuff that, Alan Patrick's writing, I'm writing, Greg Marks is writing, Bill Benham's writing. It's going to be really cool. So you guys can, the players can really splash around in the Border Kingdoms and get a feel for what that part of the realms is like. I'm really excited about it. I'm totally jazzed. It's really cool to be part of.
It's a really, really exciting thing to have this part of the realms that is sort of all your own, that we haven't seen a lot happening in anywhere else in 5th edition yet. And so that idea that you can go to Gamehole Con and play 11 adventures in this totally new, quote unquote, space in the Forgotten Realms that will be familiar to people who have, maybe played in some older editions, but will really be pretty fresh and exciting. And it's got a different feel than the rest of the realms. Like you said, I think it's going to be really exciting for people. I kind of can't wait till those adventures are on the DM's Guild, so I can run them and get my hands on them. So when you sort of sat down to write these adventures that are about kingdoms rising and falling in a little more Game of Thronesy than some other parts of the realm, did you find that there were sort of some challenges to go along with that, or that it was really exciting to be working on something new and different like that?
Yeah, for me personally, a strong political background with the human world overlaid with all the normal D&D stuff really works for me. That's the kind. If you read my other stuff that I've written for Gamehole Publishing and other places, I tend to have political intrigue kind of stuff going on. I don't know. My brain always goes back to that space. So it was really easy for me, and probably part of the reason why I directed us to go to the Border Kingdoms, quite frankly. I liked it. So I love when I write to world build. So I get a base description of a village, and to then add the details of the stores there and and create new NPCs. I delight in that stuff, and to build this to all of us working together to create these really cool NPCs that we can go back and use for years to come, and build storylines over different cons. It's going to be really fun. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and I'm again just so appreciative that our friends at Wizards did this, and the same with Dave Christos, the Moonshea Isles. He's got a great team to put together, and they're doing amazing stuff too. So this is what a great time to be a D&D player. I mean, it's crazy. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it really is an amazing time to be playing D&D, and to see the hobby grow is just incredible. Can you give us any hints about what sort of the central storyline happening is? Is there even just a word, maybe something to tease us with what's going to be coming?
Sure, sure. So the Border Kingdoms are already famous for their instability. It's really, we always keep repeating some version of it's the thing you can count on most about the Border Kingdoms is the instability. So that's happening. But in our adventures, you're going to see there's a lot more than usual, and there seems to be a a group that's on the scene of every time there's something bad going on. They seem to be there, and but they don't. You wouldn't think that they have the ability to cause as much chaos as they do, which implies there may be some other force out there that is much more sub rosa, much more unseen, that may be actually the true power that is manipulating these events to cause so much chaos in the realms of man. And what's all that about? And can we get to the bottom of it and sort it out? So that's kind of the meta plot in a very teased way.
Oh man, I really can't wait to get my hands on these. Okay, so also at Gamehole Con, there's a lot of other things happening as well. We've got all these guests, we've got panels, there's other RPGs. What else are you really excited about that will be happening at Gamehole?
Yeah, I mean, we are not just a role playing convention, and we have more role playing games than any other, but we have a really strong board game part too. So we have guests like Eric Lang, who's coming, who is probably right now one of the biggest developers designers in the industry, and he doesn't even know what he's going to run for us. You can sign up for the latest and greatest with Eric Lang. So in November, you're going to sit down with him, and he's like, "Here's what we're going to play. This is something that's coming out next year, and you get to be the first to look at it." Along similar lines, Betrayal Legacy actually releases Gamehole Con weekend. So Rob Daviau is coming out, and you can play with Rob. Betrayal Legacy, the weekend it releases. I mean, how awesome is that? So stuff like that. So we have a lot of board game guests as well as, and what's an area of sharp growth that we've noticed are miniatures. Miniatures sort of took a little bit of a nosedive there for a bit, and now they're coming back with the new 40K rules, and the War Machine people have been really strong. But we also have historical miniatures, so we have that hall seems to keep expanding. So here's a misnomer I think that people don't understand about conventions. We do not direct the games that come to our show. We have a tabletop gaming convention, but we don't say we're going to have this much X-Wing, we're going to have this much Pathfinder, we're going to have this much D&D. It's all these things are submitted to us, and we find space for it. Now we can say, hey, we don't have enough room for that, or boy, it'd be great if you gave us some more of that, but we're not actually running the games. We are a vehicle through which you all run games for everyone else. So we are responding to what everyone submits to us. So we see growth and decline in areas, and the miniatures area is one that's growing. I mean, it was pretty small a couple of years ago in our show, but now it's becoming a very robust hall with all kinds of stuff going on. Beyond that, we have I'm very proud of our kids track games. So we have a great set of games for kids 6 to 12 that are run by vetted GMs, and parents can come by and their kids can, last year it almost, quite frankly, brought me to tears to see my then 9-year-old daughter playing her first convention game of D&D. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so great. And the publishers, of course, Wizards and Fantasy Flight, they think it's great. So the kids get so much awesome swag. I mean, they get this huge bag of stuff. It's just ridiculous. So that's growing. We have things like free paint and take for miniatures, of course, True Dungeon. We have a massive free games library. Now that's another thing. This really, quite frankly, burns my ass about going to conventions, is when there's no place to play, no open gaming space. I mean, that just can't be. You can't go someplace and fight to find a place to play. So we take that extremely seriously. So we keep building new areas. As the show grows, we make sure that there's a commensurate growth with our open play spaces. And this year we're doing a couple new spots. One is it's called the Fantasy Flight Lounge. They're sponsoring it, and it's going to be a cocktail area with a bar, and they're going to run demos, and there's going to be lots of couches and low tables and also bar tables. And so that's a new space where you can go there and hang out and do whatever you want to do, chat, play games, whatever. I've been going to Gen Con for years, but that's a hell of a challenge to find a place to actually sit down and play a game if you don't rent some of your own space. Again, we're trying to say, all right, I'm coming to the show. I approach registration. Hey, my name is Meow. Here's your badge. Great. I look left and right. Where can I go? And it all makes sense. And then the whole weekend, we try to anticipate food, for example. Another thing, convention facility food is pretty crappy, and especially if you're going to be there for 4 days. So we started this at year one, a lineup of food trucks outside. So get some variety of food, because the convention centers, you tell them this, but I don't think they really believe it until they see it, that gamers will come and they'll stay on campus for 4 straight days. They're not going to take Ubers into town, downtown to go, have, fusion, whatever food. They're going to eat what is handy. And so giving some variety is something that I really care about when I go to a convention, that I don't have to eat a pretzel every meal. We're trying to picture it from the attendee standpoint and make it as fun as possible. We have a big dealer hall. I mean, that keeps growing too. I mean, that's going to be, while it's not Gen Con size, it's getting really big. And that's cool too, because, that's kind of the part of the wonder of going to a convention, is walking and say, wow, look at all these vendors and all the stuff you can buy here and see. That's kind of fun to see that take shape too.
Don't go anywhere. There's more tabletop babble coming up.
Hey there, listeners. It's Shane
and Ishan, your hosts from the Total Party Thrill podcast, the newest addition to the Don't Split the Podcast network.
We talk topics that help you, dear listener, create and play better RPG games.
We have a back catalog of more than 150 weekly episodes.
And we got nominated for an Emmy for episode 11, Social Contracts.
In episode 154, we talked about crossing the moral event horizon. How evil is too evil?
We also recap our home games, like the 40k Rogue Trader campaign, Dynasty Unwarranted.
But that's mainly just you trying to kill us all. In your defense, our characters are greedy idiots.
Don't forget the 3 years we spent in Eberron playing Morning Glory, your 5th edition D&D campaign.
We also review new RPGs and books, and every episode we build a 5th edition D&D character in the Character Creation Forge.
You might check out the Pint-Sized Punisher from episode 119, a halfling with a bad attitude, and 14 levels of Barbarian.
So to recap, Total Party Thrill, RPG advice, campaign recaps, and D&D characters built by your dashing hosts every single week.
What more could you possibly want?
To get back to the actual show?
Oh yeah, let me just hit this button, and here you go.
All right, back to the show. So another cool event that happens sort of at a lot of different cons is True Dungeon, which you had mentioned earlier. I did my first True Dungeon, I want to say 3 Gen Cons ago, when the theme was Underdark, and it was beyond immersive and incredible. Like, it was so beyond what I thought. It is a thing that to have it described, it sounds amazing, but then when you go there, you're like, oh, I had no idea. It's like the Grand Canyon. You see it in a picture, but then when you get there, you're like, oh, it is quite grand. Now I understand, right? So I'm wondering sort of if you'll indulge me for a little bit. First, let's talk about what it is, and then I'd love to talk about how it came to be. Because I think a lot of us have had the idea of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, when we're kids, but somebody was like, it would be cool, and here it is.
Yeah. Well, it is. I'm asked this question fairly frequently, what is True Dungeon? And it is a really difficult thing to describe. And as you've done it, I think you can see my challenge with it. First of all, it is the 100% the creation of Jeff Martin, my partner. He's in Southern Illinois, and years ago, he and Peter Atkinson got together, and he always had the idea of running sort of more theatrical games, and he did that with his own gaming group. And Peter was looking for something to add to Gen Con, and that's how this collaboration happened. And he started, and it's been going on for years. So now it looks a lot different than it did, 10 years ago when, it was just getting started. First of all, it is not just an experience. It's not like a fun house or anything like that. It's a gaming experience. It is something that there's a game system. It's basically a D&D light, and you have different character classes, and you wear the character sheet around your neck on a lanyard, and you have a little flashlight so you can look at it. And that character sheet has all kinds of information about your character. And there is an experience function that your characters go up in level And there's also tokens that represent magic items and weapons and things. And there's a token economy as well. You can get new tokens, and they'll kit your character out in cool ways to make the adventures easier. There's a real strong game design element in it, and that's Jeff's baby, and he does a great job of keeping the adventures challenging while you have growth, character growth. The power blow to challenges, James, that's a tough thing to keep under control, to present an experience that's challenging and not too easy and not deadly. It's really a tricky thing, especially in this space. So basically you're walking through an immersive dungeon that has extremely high quality effects. So as you mentioned, you are, when you're in the Underdark, you feel like you're in the Underdark. It's all dark with sort of purple, faint lighting, as if it's the glowing mosses as described in something that you'd read from Salvatore or something. Some people say it's a series of escape rooms. It's sort of, but it's a series of rooms, and they're either combat rooms or puzzle rooms, and you go through as a group, and you have to work collaboratively on the combat experiences and the puzzle experiences. So you have different character classes. Those character classes have different abilities, and you have to work together to solve each room. And each room is a 12-minute experience, and then you go on to the next room. So the entire thing takes 2 hours. And what we try to do is present, you walk out and say, holy cow, that was amazing. This year, there are 3. We premiered one at Origins, but all 3 of the new adventures are going to be at Gen Con, and then they'll be at Gamehole Con. And man, I just walked through the one that we did at Origins, and Jeff was showing me, and I'll tell you this, that there is the Rainbow Bridge, a la Thor, and man, it is amazing. It is this big rainbow bridge, and it's just amazing. And how he does this stuff, and where he comes up with these ideas, and then the build outs, these complicated build out animatronic characters, and it's crazy. So it's quite the experience, and it's not just a fun house. It really is a gaming experience, and that's what Jeff is, an old D&D grognard like me, true to the roots, man. I'd call it like a D&D light experience. But what's nice about it is it's accessible. My wife is not a gamer, but she loves True Dungeon. She thinks it's cool, and so it's really good for anyone that you don't have to have any experience to play it. And the vast majority of people, when they first try it, say, that's amazing, I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, I had a very similar reaction. I remember sort of walking through this underdark thing, and like you described, it really felt like you were there, and walking out of a doorway into a room and not knowing that behind me on the wall hanging over the door was this giant spider someone had crafted that spat venom all over our necks. And it was great. It was such a cool experience. And then there's also this element of like choices, bards getting up and singing songs or casting spells, or right, there's sort of a strategy to it. And at one point a rogue doing a puzzle sort of on their own, and then having this choice of, you can get this hint that will help the rest of the party progress through this puzzle, or you could take treasure for yourself. And it was like, oh, this is so great, like to see those choices being made, and knowing that the treasure is so valuable to people who play True Dungeon a lot. It was a hard decision for this rogue to make, because we were stuck. We needed the hint, but he was going to get his treasure if he just went for it, whether or not the hint helped us, right? So it was very cool.
Yeah. So, well, I appreciate that. And that's it's pretty neat. And it's wonderful for our show to have that experience that you can go and, play miniatures, D&D, Shadowrun, whatever, and board games, free games library, and then also do something like that as something to do during one of the show hours. It's great. So you can, I guess the question always is, so how would you fill 4 days of time? And so that's what we try to do, is give so many options that people are like, there are too many choices. That's the answer you want.
Absolutely. That is really, it's really very cool to just see it all come together, and to have it be even greater than one would imagine. As a gamer, we've dreamed of stuff like this our whole lives. If you've never done a True Dungeon event, I recommend checking them out and giving it a shot, because they are really, really cool.
We're working on a super secret project at this moment right now with a possible formal alliance between us and Wizards for something to be announced maybe soon. We'll see. We're still starting to work out the details, but that's a tease of teases. That's a tease of something that might happen. And if it does, it would be pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited about it.
Wow, I want to know more. I want to know more. But we'll keep it there for now, because there's one other thing I really want to talk to you about, which is the Gamehole itself. I've seen pictures of the Gamehole online. It is legendary. You yourself are a collector, I guess it would be fair to say, and sort of the Gamehole is the place where you display. It's your museum of sorts. What got you started in doing this, and what made you think, like, I really want to create like a room dedicated to D&D and all the gaming stuff that I have?
Yeah, well, I referenced my first ever D&D purchase back in 1982 when I bought the Player's Handbook. I saw it in a department store in my hometown, and I couldn't believe it. I was walking up and I saw a whole, there's a 4-panel display of the Player's Handbook, Deities and Demigods, Monster Manual, and Dungeon Master's Guide. And I looked at those covers and said, what sort of awesome thing is this? At that point, I was old enough where I was reading some fantasy literature. I just couldn't believe it. And I bought the Player's Handbook, and then I quickly, mowed as many lawns as I could to earn more money to buy the rest. And I just kept all that stuff. So my original purchase back in 1982 was a 6th printing Player's Handbook. I kept that stuff through, all the moves in college and law school and all that kind of stuff. And as when we started playing again, seriously, 20 years ago or so. So I was just buying new stuff to play. I just was trying to get new stuff. I had, get caught up on all the realm stuff and sort of flesh out all the first edition stuff I didn't have. And I guess there are a lot of people out there that have the same affliction. It's the completionist disease that a lot of us nerds have. It could be either comic books or gaming collectibles or whatever, but I have that bad. So I got to the point where, I realized, hey, I've got a lot of this stuff. I wonder if I could get all of it. And then as I was going through that, I realized I have a lot of stuff in original shrink wrap. It would be really awesome if I could complete a set of 1st and 2nd edition D&D all in original shrink wrap. And I have been able to do that. I have a complete set of stuff that's perfect in shrink. So I have a play copy and at least and usually 1 or 2 play copies and a shrink copy of everything. I have all the rares. If you go to a collector site like the Achaeum and you look at the rares, this is stuff, original modules like Palace of the Vampire Queen, for example, was the first ever D&D module. And that was published by a company called We Warriors. See, TSR did not make modules right away. They produced rules and said, hey, adventures are on you. We're just going to give you the vehicle. You go write your own games. Well, that turned around pretty quickly when they realized how much money could be made in writing adventures. If you pick up the Into the Borderlands book by that Goodman Games they did a re-release of B1 and B2. I wrote a foreword in that book about the history of modules and where how that all came to be. If anyone out there is more interested, you could read more of that there. So I just was getting more and more of this stuff, and it was in my basement for years, and then I, with a very good friend of mine, we acquired a pub in my hometown here in Middleton, Wisconsin, which is close to Madison. It's a suburb, and I moved the Gamehole upstairs above this pub. So I've got this 3-room suite above the pub I own, where my game room is and my collection is on display, as you mentioned, and it's pretty. I mean, it's the treehouse I always wanted, man. I mean, I have Monty Cook's old gaming table, for example. When he lived in Milwaukee, he had this table that was built, really a great RPG table. It looks a lot like the Geek Chic tables, something like that, sort of a recessed well, kind of like a craps table with sliding stuff on it. It's just awesome. And then I have, surrounded by art and stuff and bookcases full of all this awesome stuff. People who are not gamers walk up there and say, well, what the hell is all this? But for us, and the people like, I know my friends at Wizards have seen it and they say, oh my gosh, this is just amazing. And that's where we play once a week there. We gather there and play D&D or play Shadowrun or play Call of Cthulhu or whatever we're playing at that time. And it's awesome, man. I feel unbelievably lucky to have such a great gaming space and such a great group of friends to play games with every week. And that's, as a as a side note, I've literally gotten to meet thousands of gamers through the process of authoring and the convention, and I am amazed at how many people do not have a regular gaming group. I mean, I just assumed that everyone did, and it's rare. Actually, it's far more likely than not that people are, man, I wish I could play, and so that's why Adventure League has been so great, of course, to fill that void. Another organized play, whatever the system is, that you can come and play and join people playing your game, but at my convention, how many people come up to me and say, I get to play D&D once a year. And it's like, oh my God, that sounds so horrible. I'm so sorry for you. But yeah, so that's why I'm very lucky to have such a stable group of friends that we game together and we get to do it in this awesome space. I feel like I'm stealing, man. It's pretty great.
It's true. It's true. Well, and especially, adult lives, it gets very hard with children and jobs and families and other commitments and stuff. Like, it can get very crazy. Definitely, if you've got a home group, hold on to them.
Yeah. And I often get it's, I don't know, a couple times a month, someone will ping me and say, hey, I heard you on this podcast, or I heard about the Gamehole. Can I come see it? And yeah, if you give me some warning and you want to meet me there, I'm happy to show. These things are meant to be shared. This is not, I mean, there's security there, as a camera and all that kind of stuff. So I have some valuable stuff there. It's not just open to the public, and it's all locked and all that kind of stuff. But I'm happy if anyone wants to make the pilgrimage to Madison to see really a complete set of everything D&D. I'm there are probably 3 or 4 of us in the world that have collections like this, and so it's pretty. I can't believe that I've got one of them.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing. That is awesome. Let's see how. I think I could probably make it out there in about 11 hours from New Jersey. So yeah, so I'll see you in about 11 hours. Yeah, I mean, it really is an incredible thing you're doing with Gamehole Con. With the Gamehole and with True Dungeon, not to mention the stuff that you're writing and designing and bringing into existence for gamers to play too. So it's really incredible to have you on the show, Alex. Is there anything else I should have asked you about that we've missed?
No. Great job. This has been fun. I guess for those who are interested in the convention, the site is gameholecon.com. It's a name that kind of sticks with you, so I don't think you'll have a challenge Googling it. But if you do, it's gameholecon.com. The dates are November 8th through 11 this year in Madison, Wisconsin. There are still rooms available at their. It's kind of the Lion Energy Center. It's a big convention facility. There are hotels around it, but then there are surrounding hotels too that are a little farther away. And what we've done is we have bought out all the parking. So parking's free. So you can stay anywhere. Well, we wanted to make sure that people weren't punished if you didn't get a room real close. It's expensive for us. It's, in our ongoing efforts to not make money. But it's important that people can, that's another thing about going to a convention. You have these hidden costs. You pay for a badge, let's say it's $60. Great. Well, if you have to pay $40 in parking fees, that's really a $100 badge. And that's BS, quite frankly. So we absorb that cost. So you can stay anywhere. You can drive in from anywhere, park, and walk up to the show. But there are still rooms available all over. The city of Madison actually handles our housing now. They have a really nice portal that you can go in and enter what kind of room you want and where, and bang, they'll set you up. Games registration, event registration is in early August. If I remember correctly, it's either August 10th or 11th. So if you want to be part of the pre-registration gold rush to get at these awesome games, I mean, I'm talking like Satine Phoenix just gave me a game to put up, and I did last week, where it's one of her Sirens of the Realms games, and it's an open mic game in the Yawning Portal. It's a party of bards, and everyone's going to have a chance to try to win this prize. I mean, stuff like that. It's just crazy. You can play with Chris Perkins, you can play with Mike Merles, you can play with Jeremy Crawford, you can play with Monty Cook, you can play with Shanna. I mean, just opportunities that are hard to, Steve Jackson is running Car Wars. I mean, that just blows my mind, man. A chance to play Car Wars with Steve Jackson. Mark Miller is here to run. You can play Traveler with Mark Miller. So yeah, get a badge, and then you can go through this. There are almost 2,500 different individual game events, and build a wish list and come and enjoy the gaming cornucopia.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And if people want to find you on Twitter or anything like that, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, if you search me, Alexander Kammer, my Twitter handle right now is GHC and Tacos. I'm obviously a big taco fan. I'm out of the closet about that. Yeah, so if you're especially if you're interested in vintage D&D products, what I'm doing now is I'm doing a tour, chronological tour of every TSR release, one product per day. And I'm in I'm just getting started in 1987 right now with what TSR release. So you can see every day, I'll put something else up in original shrink wrap that you can take a look at, and in the character limit, describe what it is. So if you're interested in that, that's you can follow me and you can check that stuff out.
Yeah, that has been a super fun time. I've really enjoyed that. So, well, thank you so much for joining me, Alex. And best of luck at Gamehole Con. People should 100% go and check it out. It sounds like the convention that all other conventions should aspire to. So thank you so much for coming on to talk about it and for talking about True Dungeon and the Gamehole. This was awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure. And again, most sincere thank you to you, James, with the great stuff that you do. The stuff that you're producing is amazing. I love you. I love your work, and keep doing it. And let's keep making more awesome for everyone to enjoy.
Right back at you. Right back at you. And thank you very much. That was awesome. Alex is such a good guest. I'm sure he will be back in your ears soon. Thank you to him so much for coming on the show. Tabletop Babble is nearing the 100 American review mark, and I would love to hit this milestone very soon. Plus, if you leave us a 5-star review, I will read it out loud on the show and credit the person who left it. You can make me say anything you want, like Vorn, Tiamat's Bane. I know this person a little bit, but let's get to the review and then talk about how awesome they are. Vorn Tiamat's Bane says, this is a great podcast hosted by a great person and DM. This podcast is simply one of the best. Its episodes have a variety of people on that love RPGs, and you will find yourself learning about topics that include behind the scenes on working on role-playing games, upcoming products and Kickstarters, tips and advice, and I could keep going on. It was James's podcast that I learned about D&D in a castle, which just happened in France. I was able to go and had James as my DM, where he held a fantastic 3-day campaign, which culminated with the end of the reign of Tiamat. So call me slightly biased coming off a fantastic experience, but listen to this podcast if you want to be entertained and informed. Signed, Vorn Tiamat's Bane of the Volkaratiki clan. So Vorn Tiamat's Bane was played by an amazing player. One of just a great friendship has sprung out of my relationship with this person. Scott, thank you so much for leaving this review and for bringing Vorn to life and becoming the Bane of Tiamat. I had a blast playing with you at D&D in a castle. The Don't Split the Podcast Network is always growing. And we have grown quite a bit in this last week. We are thrilled to announce that Total Party Thrill, see what I did there, is joining our network. Total Party Thrill, if you've never heard of it, is something you should definitely check out. I've been listening, subscribing for years, and I love every single episode of this podcast. It's a must listen for me. As soon as I get the new episode, I check it out. It's hosted by Shane and Ishan, who are two D&D experts who have been playing together for years. They talk about their campaigns, they give advice, and it's not just D&D 5e. They talk about all kinds of amazing stuff, and it's not just good for DMs. It's also really, really great for players. In fact, there's a segment every episode called The Character Creation Forge, where they build a level 20 D&D character and talk about how they built it and why they built it and what stories you can tell with that character. It is really, really amazing. You're going to want to check it out, especially this week, because this week they are reviewing Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, which just came out. The embargo lifts on Thursday. Their podcast drops Thursday at 6 a.m. You're going to want to get it immediately to check it out and hear what they have to say. So head on over to iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcatcher app you use. Search for Total Party Thrill and hit subscribe. You will not be disappointed. All right, people, you can find me on Twitter at James Introcaso. And if you want to check out what game design stuff I'm doing, and there are some big announcements still coming up this year, head on over to worldbuilderblog.com. It's been a busy year, and I am almost finally able to talk about all of it. So go check it out. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by Battle Bards. Don't forget that RPGs are like sex. Make sure everybody is cool with it before you start recording. Hey everybody, I just wanted to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Kobold Press. And in July, Kobold Press is all about the Zobek Gazetteer by the one and only James J. Hake. He's an amazing author. He and I have worked together on a couple different things, and he's just the best. He actually gave me my very first job. He is 10 years younger than me, and it makes me feel very inferior and like I got my life started too late. But he's an amazing person and a great game designer, and you are going to love the Zobek Gazetteer for 5th edition. It's a city book that works in Midgard, the premier campaign setting from Kobold Press, or anywhere. You can drop it into any campaign. It features NPCs and locations like the Arcane Collegium and the Kobold Ghetto. And it's got all kinds of awesome new creatures like Troll Bouncers and the Mouse King. Hooks and lore for gangs, guilds, and gods of the city. It includes a school of clockwork magic, backgrounds and feats for Gearforged and humans, plus magic items unique to the setting. This is such an amazing product, and it is a great supplement to throw into any 5th edition D&D game. So go check it out at the Kobold Press store at koboldpress.com. You won't be disappointed. James J. Hake is a consummate professional. So go check him out.